Thank you very much. I shall begin with the remark that it is the study that I am about to carry out yet. So now these are some conclusions from my commentaries, from my own thoughts on the issue, but the proper study will still be carried out, and now I would like to share with you my ideas. Sorry for some of them if they look too paradox and too contradictory with each other. Belarus has declared its aspiration to neutrality in its constitution of 1994. It was formulated very cautious, not neutrality but striving for neutrality, aspiration for neutrality. And since the very beginning it had problems with how to accommodate neutrality concept in its foreign policy. It was clear that the political establishment of the country cannot think yet in such complicated terms, maybe. Formulated ideas are too dangerous sometimes to leave something in unclear state is much better. But still, I would say that in all these years, since 1994, neutrality concept as concept had a very bad fate, because nobody wanted it really. Everybody criticized, and actually it belonged to no one as concept. The government officials sometimes paid lip service to the concept and said that, yeah, but Belarus is neutral and we are a member of the movement of non-alignment, and so we try to avoid siding with one side, etc. But it was really not much more than that. And opposition quite rightly criticized that alongside with this declaration about neutrality, we participate in different post-Soviet organizations, some of them with clear political and strategic military orientation, especially towards Russia. Even when the opposition criticized and criticizes this concept, it doesn't mean that we can find many supporters of neutrality concept among opposition activists. Normally, the logic is their argumentation goes as follows: that yeah, it is good, but we cannot do it because we are in such a place and we are so weak. So, and even if NATO is, even if neutrality is somehow supported, then sooner or later, I find in this argumentation that the people want simply to join the West in all senses, and it means also joining the NATO. As a concept, it looks as if Belarus has little to do with neutrality. But still, first I tried also to avoid this term. But for some recent years, I found out a lot of elements in Belarusian foreign policy and national security policy that I couldn't classify very good. I had to find for them some designation. And I found that the notion of neutrality fits very well. Maybe not neutrality as a complete notion, so to say, but I would like to speak about elements of neutrality. Growing elements of neutrality in Belarusian foreign policy and national security policy. So here it is important that we distance ourselves from normative approach. It means that, of course, Belarus cannot build neutrality like in Switzerland or like in Sweden, or even like in Finland after the Second World War. Of course, because Belarus is not Switzerland, Finland, and Sweden. And when these three countries also built their neutrality, they had no normative notion of how it shall look like. They also acted normally ad hoc, so if there is a situation, they reacted to it. And here what I would like to say is that paradoxically these norms that is stipulated by the Belarusian constitution striving for neutrality now without being consciously formulated, consciously defended by Belarusian officials, is defended maybe more even unintently sometimes, and more in an instinctive way, as a way of survival, so to say, with regards to Russian policies. And it is a practice of neutrality that now gives meaning to this notion. And that is something that is, of course, very contradictory. But I would like here to quote, Netanyahu, who said that something that swims like duck and quacks like duck and flies like duck and it looks also like duck, it is duck. And because of this, I would say so that if we see here elements that look like neutrality elements, there is also no reason to deny that they exist. What is important here to see to bring some examples, I would like to consider these two realms that are most relevant for neutrality, and it is of course first foreign policy and second national security policy. What we see in foreign policy, there are a lot of moves, because here the thing is that Belarus, of course, as a country close to Russia, so I will emphasize here the points that give us reasons to speak that Belarus has its autonomous political position, and its position now moves towards neutrality. Because of course we can also discuss Belarusian neutrality with regards to its relations to European Union maybe, or United States, or some other country, of course. But still, because Russia is our most important neighbor, so because of this. And here we see a series of events and developments which started in approximately, I would say, in 2006. And first of them, I would say, were two very cautious moves when, if you remember the presidential elections of 2006 and 2006, they were known for looking for Georgian and Ukrainian militants who were allegedly about to change the regime in Belarus, so to say. And also Belarusian government accused especially Georgians of intervention, so to say. But very soon after the election, Minsk established good relations with both a new orange government in Kiev and with the government of Mikhail Saakashvili. That went over, it was already in contradiction to Russian policy then, which then went towards military conflict with Georgia, as we know. So it was first time that we see major foreign policy move by Minsk toward its own position, autonomous and maybe even neutral. Then comes another question, even a question of how Belarus also in late 2000s started to discuss, has started to articulate its relations with developing countries, because developing countries were a partner to be declared by Belarusian diplomats and Belarusian leadership since maybe mid-1990s, but it was always a kind of some trade here, some trade here. In late 2000, we see that Belarus started to tinker, to work with the project of bringing non-Russian oil into the region. It was, of course, Venezuelan oil, brought through such also through Ukraine and Estonia. Was somebody else? Okay, so I mean that this was a very important step, because for the first time it was an attempt really to break out of this vicious circle of dependence on Russian oil, first of all. Then comes, of course, also Georgian War. Georgian War, on which also Belarus has chosen not to side with Russia, and of course it didn't support Georgia like some other post-Soviet countries, also Ukraine, but still I would say that it can be classified as a neutral position. It was not anti-Russian position, it was neutral position. After these subsequent events, also we see non-recognition of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and although Russia pressured Belarus into recognizing them, until today it is not solved. Then come also a series of these events. I have put here, sorry for technical problems, so I will just cut it short, that maybe only just more examples, that we see in the same time that in 1990 Lukashenko also tried to find some alternative, even Russian oppositional figures. And we see that now there is evidence that Belarusian leadership cooperated very closely with Boris Berezovsky, a very well-known figure, and you can see it is just one man. It is not just one man, but Boris Berezovsky. It is a part of Russian business and political not class, but corporation, so to say. And when Belarusian government has chosen to work with him, even when he became the nemesis of Putin, it means that even on such sensitive issue, Minsk dared to do a very risky thing. And it was not for 1 year, it was for many years. Then we see also, of course, how Lukashenko has saved also Bakiyev from the anger of pro-Russian then government of Kyrgyzstan. Okay, then last two examples. With war in eastern Ukraine and annexation of Crimea, first, and second, also conflict with Turkey. Again, Belarus didn't oppose Russia in these cases, of course, and it simply has taken another position than Russia, and this position looks very much like neutrality. Because of this, I would say that there are at least some very considerable elements of neutrality that were known there even 10 years ago. Maybe a couple of words about also parallel developments in policy of national security. Here is one very important point that sometimes or very often is forgotten. The point is when we talk now about the state of Belarusian army, when we talk now about the state of Belarus-Russian military links, then for me the first question is, what was the baseline? You say me that, for example, if somebody says me that that both armies, they are so interlinked, they are very close, etc., etc. I say, okay, well, and what is the trend? To which side? Is it increasing, decreasing? And here is the question: that what was the baseline? Just take as a baseline the situation in 1994 maybe, or even in mid-1990s, so when Lukashenko came. And what we see, it was essentially one single organism, one single body, Russian and Belarusian army. The same doctrine, the same equipment, the same tactics, strategy, the same training. You could easily go from one army to another army, and there was no such thing as Belarusian army. And if you compare it to nowadays, it is clear that now in both the doctrine, for example, if we take the doctrine, then Russia still has so Russian armed forces still have a task of global confrontation, of, so to say, existential war, of global conflict, of clash with NATO, with Americans, with somebody else. And just to compare it to Belarusian army. Belarusian army, which now very clearly both has a doctrine that emphasizes some kind of counterinsurgency, of preventing some kind of guerrilla or this kind of low intensity military action, and it is doctrine. Then also comes also the practice. If we look at trainings, the drills that Belarusian army undergoes, it is first of all drills to prevent things that happened to Ukrainians in Crimea and in eastern Ukraine. So it means guarding of certain facilities, of stopping some subversive activities, and it is something that is drilled since at least 2 years, for 2 years already. And last point may be about equipment also. Equipment. Lukashenko has said himself that equipment we don't need all these helicopters and aircraft. It was said in 2014, I think. We need special operations forces. So it is another approach also proven by this approach to equipment, and really he not only said that, he also acted, so to say, because if we look at what Belarusian government, well, not buys normally, but still. So I mean, well, what equipment Belarusian government tries to maintain, It is first of all equipment for special operations forces, and also for this kind of conflicts, so low intensity military conflicts with irregular forces first of all. And here of course remains a question that yes, but Belarusian army still participates in Russian military drills, in joint drills with Russia. And it looks on the other hand, on the one hand, it is so. On the other hand, there is also interesting dynamic that, for example, in recent Shit Soyuza drills, there were a quarter less forces involved than in previous. I don't know whether it is a stable trend, because I compared just last two, but this one. Second, also that, for example, as far as training is concerned, Belarusian army now has much more people who were trained in the country. And first of all, because although it is financially maybe not the best option, but for years already the government tries to establish education courses for military officers also in civilian universities. And it is also something that there was nothing, next to nothing, when the baseline year was. And now it is there. So to come to some conclusion, I would say that these are only some elements, and also in national security policy I can continue and point out development of defense industries, of national defense industries, cooperation, very intensive cooperation with China. Of course, cooperation with China is also important to understand these neutrality elements also in foreign policy, but still in military and defense industries realm, it is very important, because now we see at least 3 projects that are underway or were implemented with China. It is creation of multiple missile launcher, creation now of surface-to-air missile systems, and also now the launch of Belarusian satellite recently. So, and as a conclusion, I would like only to discuss the origins of this practice of neutrality. I don't think that there was a book, not some secret book or open book. I don't think there was really a discussion where a Belarusian government decided to do that or this. I think they, in a small country, it is too difficult to do such things. It emerged, I think, as a response to failure of another project of Belarusian government that has a lot to do with Russia. And first it was, of course, this idea of Alexander Lukashenko to go somehow to Moscow in 1990s. And then the idea that we can establish a kind of relationship that will resemble a relationship between America and Israel. It is something that also Lukashenko himself discussed at least in one interview. He told that it is for us an example and an ideal. They try to do that, and you know that under alien Yeltsin there was a chance, and these regional policies of Lukashenko, because he acted essentially, I can say that what he did also corresponded to his words about Israel. And when he went to Russian regions to speak to the people, when he tried to find some lobby among generals and defense industries managers in Russia, it looks even now as an attempt to create some pro-Belarusian lobby to act in Russia like pro-Israeli lobby acts in the United States. But it didn't happen like that, and essentially the groups which were the hope of Belarusian leadership in this regard, they were sidelined and marginalized by Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. And then, I would say it was early 2000s, maybe 2003, 4, 5, it was a question how to survive. And to survive here also instinctive, it was simply to try to deal with the opportunities that are. And opportunities and of course limits. And Belarus is limited in this regard. I have put here a map just to underscore that Belarus has not so boundless opportunities. Belarus is in, and will remain in historical time, at least for next century or more, on the border of a huge country, Russia. And whether we like it or hate it, or would like to destroy Russia, it is there. It is there. And the thing is that it is very good line here, because it looks like front line. And I would say so that idea to have with Russia front line and not border, it is worse than have a border. And neutrality for Belarus, it is a cautious attempt to build a kind of border, and also to stay friends, to stay partners, and maybe even brothers. And that is a viable option, which of course will cause a lot of negative reaction from both Russia and maybe from other stakeholders. But even today, when we look at responses from Russia to Belarusian cooperation with Ukraine, contacts with Ukrainian officials, supplies to Ukraine, or Belarusian reaction to what happened between Russia and Turkey, I would say that even that caused essentially harmless actions of the Russian government, caused a lot of very harsh reaction on behalf of people known to be close to Kremlin, like Satanovsky. So I would imagine that it will not be easy task. It will remain very hard task to increase these neutrality elements, to build more neutral Belarus, so to say. But I would also end with the sentence that for me, elements of neutrality in Belarus and foreign policy and national security policy are quite tangible, visible, increasing, and they are developing in parallel for years already. So it is reality. Thank you.